In this week's In-Ear Insights, I can't go a day without seeing 100 different headlines and 100 different posts from marketers all in on ChatGPT, which is fine. It's cool because the tool, when you use it properly, is highly effective. When you use it improperly, not so much. Uh, but the thing that stuck out to me, Katie, and I want to get your take on this, is everyone is all in on this technology, large language models with an easy chat interface, but no one's really talking about sort of the last part of the 5 Ps, which is how do we know this thing is working better than what we've been doing? The danger is if you're unsophisticated in the usage of it, it tends to deliver average content because it is mathematically an average of the content that it's ingested. And so if your content previously was maybe better than average, and for speed's sake or for convenience sake, you started having it do literally all your work, that quality may slip down to average. And we know from Google's search quality rating guidelines that one of the most damning sentences in the entire thing for medium quality content is nothing wrong, but nothing special. So why aren't people thinking about that final P? Why are people not thinking about how do we measure whether this thing is worth it or not? And how would we measure it?
Well, it's definitely a shiny object at the moment. And that's not to say that it's not going to stick around. It obviously is. It's like when, email first started or the internet first started, or, I think we've gone through what, Clubhouse and NFTs and Web3 and, all the different, you know, fun new tools and, technologies that people get super excited about. Like, I'm with you. I am tired of seeing every single day everything about ChatGPT. In one of the um, communities I saw that has nothing to do with marketing, somebody was using ChatGPT to write, to ask it to write like a Wikipedia entry about like what the community was about. I'm like, why can I not escape this thing? A friend of mine, her husband, is using ChatGPT like every 2 seconds to like, write songs and limericks about the types of work that they do, which has no bearing. And I asked her, does he know that, it actually costs money to run this thing? Like, not millions of dollars, but like he knows that he's spending money and wasting money. And so I think that that's first. In terms of measurement, that's a question that I ask you a lot, Chris, is what does this cost me? Like, how much are we spending on this thing? And so, I think we talked about, true ROI last week, and it's, expenses and spend and return and all that stuff that goes into it. And my first question in terms of measuring Chat GPT is how much time and money are we spending using this thing? And I would want to sort of have at least a ballpark of what that looks like. So, Chris, you've spent a lot of time, developing and fine tuning prompts and prompt engineering. And so that in and of itself takes time. Like that's, your R&D time of, trial and error. But every time you run it through the system, it costs money, not a lot of money, but still costs money. And so that would be the first thing that I would look at is what is the time we are investing into this thing? How much time are we spending fine tuning? And then all of the things that come out, how much of it are we actually using? So that's part one. Part two then is of the things that we created with ChatGPT, how much of it is making it into production? The content, the summaries, the headlines, the whatever it is, the tweets, how much of that is then making it into production? And of those things, depending on the context, whether it's for awareness or purchase or, whatever the phase, what are those things doing? So it's not just, at least to me, it's not just as simple as, oh, well, I used ChatGPT, it saved me 5 minutes. Well, great, but did it actually do the thing? Because to your point, Chris, if it's mediocre, then it's not doing the thing. It's not doing better than you could have done without using the system.
Exactly. And this is where, good project governance is important. For example, we were doing some client work for a client last week on some code. And that's an example where I used it heavily, right? Because your code has to be functional. It has to run. but there is no special skill advantage for writing 80% of the code. I was having it right. I was having it right. um, User interface components for a shiny web app, and it worked great. It saved me easily a couple of hours by just generating the pieces. The couple things that got wrong, I was able to fix immediately because I know how to code that particular app. I just didn't feel like doing the manual typing out of all the pieces. So that was an example of where there was a very strong time savings. The service level we're at is $20 a month. So it is a $20 a month expense. So it's a very nominal hard dollar cost. Is the soft dollar cost, like you said, that can cost that most organizations consume a decent amount of money on, particularly if you're making like song limericks instead of doing actual work.
Mm-hmm.
For things like YouTube summaries, we use it extensively. Right? It is probably we use it for YouTube summaries, which do go into production. We do use it for some transcript cleanup here and there, but not consistently. And the thing that stood out to me when we're talking about this stuff is that we're not, and this is just industry wide, we're not really looking at a even a simple A/B test, right? Here
Mm-hmm.
is content created by the service. Here's content created by us. Which content performs better? And you'd want to do this. I would think you would want to do this in a very straightforward manner. If you have 10 pieces of content you're publishing each week, 5 of them should be machine generated, 5 of them should be human generated, and then after a month's time, compare the numbers. Like, see, okay, what did better. Ideally, they're all on or about a related set of topics, so that you can measure the performance of the machine's skills within that topic. And if we were doing this for a client, we would probably do it with something like a binary classification model, where the machine's writing is the treatment, and it's straight out of biostatistics. The treatment is applied to one group, and you have a control group, and you see, okay, what is the lift? Because when we post content, just like in anything in marketing, you're always going to get some expected baseline of performance. So the question is there a lift above and beyond what you would have gotten anyway had you just posted content normally? So that's the type of testing structure I would like to see, that I don't see folks using.
Well, and I don't want to go down a, rabbit hole, but I do want to go back to something you said, Chris, when you were talking about the time savings of ChatGPT and you were using it to help you write code. Had you not been aware of the issues, it actually could have created more work for you, wasted more of your time, because I would wager that a lot of people are not fact checking the information that comes out of a system like ChatGPT. That's not to say that, the system is going out of its way to get it wrong, but it's not perfect. It's just like us. We get things wrong, and the system is using information generated by humans. So the information's likely to be wrong from time to time. And so, that relying so heavily on a system like ChatGPT or any, content creation system like that, you run the risk of actually creating more work for yourself and spending more money and wasting more time. And so in your case, you said it saved you a couple of hours, but had you not known where it had gotten the code wrong, it actually could have created another few days of work for you trying to troubleshoot this code. And so, I that again, sort of that goes back to the performance piece of me of like, is it truly time savings? And so now you're talking about A/B testing to see whether or not the content created by ChatGPT is better. I think that that's an excellent way to test the performance and the effectiveness. Um, I would imagine if you're using it to write code, you know, is the ChatGPT code better than the code created by a human?
Does it even run?
Does it even run? I think that these things are excellent ways to test the performance before you say, okay, we're going all in. We're going to lay off our whole writing stuff, and everything's going to be written by this computer. You have to be able to measure the performance first, because your tone, your personality, the way in which you communicate things is going to take a long time for this machine to learn, because you have inherently been you for your whole life. And this machine has known you for all of you know, well, Chris, for you, a couple years, but that's still not a long time to be able to say, I can write exactly the same way that Chris Penn would write.
And here's the thing about the software. This is something I talk about a lot in relation to it. It is best used by subject matter experts. If you're going to use it for generation, it is best used by subject matter experts. Who should it not be used by? The intern, right? So if you are, or the lowest paid member on your team, I'm thinking back to our agency days when all the grunt work was shunted off to the account coordinators, the junior most people with the lowest billing rates, and they were good kids. They were nice people. They had no professional experience. They were literally right off the boat from college, and having them say, okay, now you're going to go write 5 news releases on, SaaS-based firewall appliances. And of course, it took a lot of time for the back and forth with the client because you had somebody who had no idea what they were doing, trying to get smart and write about a topic very quickly. And the machine is in many ways very similar to that. It has a wider body of knowledge and better writing skills than about half of the team members we know, but it is still not going to include the pieces of subject matter expertise that you would need to use the software well. And so, that has been something that people don't want to hear, that is best used by subject matter experts. When you look at the ChatGPT statistics from OpenAI, a lot of people are, 45% of its usage is net new generation, whereas the things that's really good at, like summarization and rewriting, is only about 10%, even though that's the best possible use of the tool. Taking, for example, the words that we are saying on this podcast, we've got all sorts of weird language things we say, or this or right, and that's stuff that doesn't need to be in the final copy. It's really good at that. It's really good at taking that stuff out, but preserving our unique point of view, our words. It doesn't have to learn our tone of voice because it's just rewriting the content that's already there to improve it grammatically and structurally. And yet 45% of people there are just using it for net new stuff. And again, I would strongly caution that if you're going to use it for generation, use it with a subject matter expert. Otherwise, like you said, you could very well be handing out completely wrong, very plausibly sounding, completely wrong information.
Well, it's like my husband likes to say, if you say anything with authority, people will believe you.
That's 100% the truth.
And to be fair, he doesn't say anything that's like, damaging or dangerous. It's more of, just telling people the wrong information about like what they're supposed to be doing that day at their job or just sort of messing with them. But, it can be a dangerous thing. I mean, I think it might have been last week or the week before. The days all kind of blur together. But, the rise of misinformation being shared across news outlets because people are using ChatGPT and they're not fact checking and they're just using it for new content generation to try to get, hundreds of thousands of pieces of content out so that they're basically saturating the internet with their brand, their name, their byline. And that is definitely, a huge concern. And so when you're talking about measuring performance, you know, you're talking about the time savings, the cost investment, the A/B testing performance, but also then you're talking about things like brand reputation. You know, is the content or whatever you're using ChatGPT to generate helping or hurting your brand because of the type of information that it's putting out? Are you spending the time to make sure that it's correct and accurate and aligns with, your vision and your mission and your values? Because Chris, to your point, if left unchecked and if, being used by the wrong resource in your company, that could be hugely problematic because maybe the person who's using it, they're not the subject matter expert, and so they don't understand the nuance of, some of the phrasing, or maybe they don't understand the history that you maybe had with a certain client, so you can't name them, or whatever the situation is. And so these things have to have human intervention, and that has to be part of the performance. Is, even before it goes out to the production, like, did ChatGPT even get it right? And if not, then why are you using it? Because then you're just wasting time.
Yep. So here's a fun example on that topic. I had it say write a description for a ribeye steak cut sold at Whole Foods, and
Mhm.
it comes up with these things to say, we work with our trusted farmers to ensure our beef is sustainably raised and ethically sourced, so you can feel good. I don't know if that's actually true or not. Now, I'm not gonna ask you to out your husband either.
Well, and to be fair, like he has no control over that, but he does work at Whole Foods. And what I do know is that since being bought out by Amazon, the standards, the food standards have changed. They aren't what they were before in terms of you only get, food sourced from like 20 miles in any direction from the individual store. That's just not how it works anymore. So there's definitely some inaccuracies in here.
Exactly, but I don't know that. And
Right.
I'm not a dummy. Like I'm a reasonably educated consumer.
Hmm.
This sounds pretty decent. I mean, we
Yep.
could talk about marbling scores and stuff like that for a cut of steak. But again, would this copy sell? Probably. Would it be convincing to somebody who's like me, who's a layperson? Probably.
Hmm.
Is it right? No. And and that's a part of the measurement, right? Is either just general reputational damage,
Hmm.
which is one part, or you're getting sued, which is
Right.
which is an entirely different can of worms that we don't have time to go into today. But that's part of your measurement strategy. Is if you're going to use this tool, like any tool, have you done the risk mitigation? Do you have risk mitigation practices in place so that you can take those factors out of the cost? Because otherwise, that $1 million lawsuit is going to really impact your ROI.
It absolutely would. I would not be a fan of getting slapped with one of those. And that's not to say that humans won't make the same mistake and put out the
Right.
same wrong information. When you introduce a piece of software like ChatGPT, you're introducing yet another checkpoint, another layer of potential risk with misinformation. And so these are just, internally, your process should be such that you're able to have time to do that quality assurance check on any piece of content, do the fact check. And ChatGPT may be able to write a first draft for you, but if nobody's checking the information, then let's say, Chris, let's just play out the scenario that, I asked you to, write up something about ribeye steaks and you use ChatGPT and I don't bother to check it. And if this goes out and customers start going up to the meat counter going, I saw your piece on ribeye steaks. I want that thing. Then the people who are standing behind the counter are going to have to say, well, we don't have that. That's not a thing. That's not true. Or whatever the information is that needs to be corrected. Now you have a bunch of angry customers going, well, you lied to me. It was a bait and switch. You put out this information to tell me that I could get this thing. And now I'm hearing you telling me I can't get it. Well, now I'm going to go online and I'm going to tell people how you lied to me, regardless of the fact that, like, it was an honest mistake and nobody did the digging to fact check it. Now you have a horde of angry customers who are going to ruin your reputation on Facebook groups and Yelp reviews and Google My Business and, stand outside and picket the Whole Foods because they didn't get the marbled ribeye that they were promised in this one innocent little piece of content. It can have a far reaching, domino effect if you're not doing your due diligence. And this all, again, goes into performance. And so, we're sort of getting a little bit ranty and like off topic, but if we bring it back to performance and how are we measuring the effectiveness, I would ask people who are using ChatGPT to generate net new content to kind of keep track of how many things the system gets wrong, how many things you have to correct, not just editing in terms of grammar and tone, that kind of thing, but the actual data and the facts that they are getting wrong. Because that to me says this is not the right system for you to be using if it's consistently getting information wrong about the type of business that you're running.
Right. Or you need to spend a whole bunch of time learning prompt optimization, which is a whole sub discipline of using it.
Well,
So
and that's sort of again, the trade-off. Like that's the time it's taking. So then just write it yourself.
there is the whole write it yourself thing, but I would say that the advantage of the tool is it's kind of like writing code. Once you're done with the code, then it requires relatively minimal tweaking to continue to have it run. So that is a sustainable advantage of any large language model. Is once you've got the code in place, then it's just running that code over and over again with little variations from time to time. The other thing that, again, people haven't given enough thought to is when you're doing the prompt creation, are you using measurement to inform that? So, for example, when you are, if you're a more advanced user and you're fine tuning the model for your business, are you feeding it all your content, or are you feeding it just your best content? Right? Because there's the piece that the intern wrote, and then there's the piece that your co-founder, your CEO wrote. Which do you want to inform the model or inform the prompts that you're feeding the model to generate? If you are asking it to rewrite a piece of content that maybe was from an interview, do you want to train it on the interview content itself? Do you want to refine the entire interview, or do you want to refine just certain parts, because certain parts may or may not need it? And that has to come from measurement, right? So if you are looking at top performing content, you should be looking at the metrics around that to say these are the things that we want to use to guide the model to begin with, so that it doesn't generate mediocre content. Because again, without enough specificity, it's just going to spit out the mathematical average of what it knows about a given topic. You have to be incredibly specific and use very specific jargon. It's like SEO in a lot of ways. It's like doing keyword optimization for SEO, except it's prompt optimization. So what keywords are you going to use to have the language model trigger the proper associations to generate high quality content? And this again is where your research and your data has to inform it. If you are trying to rank for marketing consulting, semantically, what are the highest rated or top performing terms that are surrounding marketing consulting from a language perspective, from your SEO tool, that should also be in that prompt, so that it generates language that is appropriate to create that high performing content? Not just write a blog post about marketing consulting, right? You're going to get average content. Write a blog post about the application of Porter's 5 forces to a marketing consulting perspective on SaaS-based software companies with revenues above $500 million, right? That would be a much better prompt if you were to look at the semantics around it. Again, I don't see that happening.
But then you still have to measure the effectiveness of that content. Did it do what
Exactly.
you wanted it to do? And so this, when we talk about the performance, the fifth P in the 5P structure, you're right, Chris. I don't know that companies have gotten to the point where they're, well, let me take a step back. ChatGPT is still very much a shiny object to a lot of companies, to a lot of people. They're still just trying to figure out what the heck it does, how reliable it is, where it fits into their marketing. And a lot, and this has been the conversation about AI, will AI take my job? A lot of people are nervous that ChatGPT will take their job, especially if their sole purpose at the company is to write content, write headlines, whatever that piece is. And so if you're concerned that ChatGPT is doing a better job than you, then this is where you start to do that A/B test to really measure the performance. This is where you start to learn really good prompt engineering, so that you're telling ChatGPT what to write, and then you can take it to the finish line and then measure the effectiveness of that piece of content. And so, in terms of measurement, keep track of the time that you're investing into the system in terms of learning it, tweaking it, how many things it's getting wrong that you're having to correct. Do some A/B testing between human generated content and AI generated content. And then, just start to understand, is it enhancing your brand? Is it damaging your brand? All of those things, go into understanding the performance of introducing a tool like this into your ecosystem.
Exactly. And the A/B test, to be real clear, is not a complicated thing. Gather the URLs from your content. Go into your Google Analytics or your web analytics software. Get the sessions for each piece of content. And then go in and tag, this was AI, this was not AI. Just go down the list of pieces of content. You want it to be at about a 50-50 split. So you want half the content to be human generated purely, half the content to be AI generated. And then sort your table by AI generated or not, and do a median, just the median number of sessions for each. And if they're comparable, great. If one is, say, more than one standard deviation away from the other, then okay, the one clearly has a statistical advantage over the other. And you can look at obviously things like page time per page to see if the content was engaging and kept people on it. You can look at things like bounce rate for that page. You can look at things like participated in conversion within that session. Those will all be additional metrics, but the basic A/B test is, did you even get people to read the content, right? Did the way that the machine's headlines and body copy outperform the human generated? And I would encourage you, do this for 30 days, right? Try and publish a new piece of content every day, because the machine's good at writing content, and to try and get 10 of each, 10 machine made, 10 human made. And then at the end of 30 days, look at your content. You'll look at your numbers and say, is it qualitatively better? Is it quantitatively better? If it is, then every quarter rerun that test to make sure that its quality is not changing, and that your quality is you have not lost the ability to write.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, sounds like some people got to get their acts together and start to put together a measurement plan for their shiny new object of ChatGPT.
It does, and almost all of our content is human generated now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking it might be time for us to do the reverse and say, okay, well, we have our list of blog posts we've done human versions of. Maybe the next 30 days we'll try putting up ChatGPT versions. We'll label them ChatGPT generated, but to see how they perform. Well, I think that'd be kind of a fun test, because we know we've got human-based content that did well. We can set up some social shares and share each post. Same day, each post gets shared once, human and machine generated, and see what happens. I think that'd be a fun experiment to try.
You got a cloning machine back there too?
Not yet, but
all right. Well,
I mean, come on, ChatGPT is going to save us all this time, so it'll be fine.
Okay. You let me know how that goes.
I will. What day of the week do you want me to put these up on? But no, I think that would be a good live example of, like, here's how we test this thing out.
All right, I will add that to our list of upcoming live streams. So for those of you listening, stay tuned for that. Our live stream is every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern on our YouTube channel, trustinsights.ai/YouTube.
All right. Well, I think that's about it for this week. If you've got some ChatGPT measurement stories that you would like to share your expertise on, pop on over to our free Slack group. Go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, where you and 3,000 other human marketers are asking and answering each other's questions every single day. And wherever it is you watch or listen to the show, if there's a platform that you would rather have it on instead, you can find it at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast. And while you're there, please leave us a rating or review. It does help share the show. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon.